Let's talk about some of the work that you've been doing in Washington. You recently introduced a series of bills, including one that was co-sponsored by Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democrat from New York, that targeted small business startups.
Right.
What's that legislation designed to do?
Yeah, well, I'm very excited about this legislation, actually. I introduced 3 bills, a series of bills, each of which I recruited a Democrat senator to be a co-sponsor initially, as initial lead sponsor, so that we'd have bipartisan support. And then, much to his credit, Eric Cantor, the majority leader in the House, rolled up 6 bills which included the House companions to my legislation. It's called the Jobs Act, and the whole purpose is to allow growing companies to access capital more easily, more affordably. And that's so important to economic growth and job creation, because when a growing company has more access to capital, the first thing they do when they raise capital, it's almost always to expand their business. And that means hiring more workers. So I was delighted when it passed the House. The President endorsed it, and we were able to pass this bill in the Senate. So it is now easier for a company to do an IPO, to go public and raise capital that way. It will now be easier for companies to raise money privately, for those that prefer to remain private. This will directly benefit many, many small and medium-sized companies in Pennsylvania.
Companies like Wawa.
Companies like Wawa. Now, their circumstances are that they have been a private company for many years, but they're an older company, several generations of ownership, and they have reached the limit on the number of shareholders that a company is permitted to have without triggering all of the very expensive and onerous reporting requirements. Well, we lifted that limit for all companies, so it's no longer 499. We've lifted it to 2,000. So companies like Wawa can go out and raise the capital they need to open more stores and hire more workers. They're a perfect illustration, a perfect example of the kind of company that's going to be able to hire more workers because of this bill.
Okay, 73 votes in the Senate, 380 in the House, so that's certainly an example of some bipartisan legislation. A more controversial vote, I know, that was cast recently, though, came late last month. You voted no on renewing what's called the Violence Against Women Act, though it did pass the Senate. Why did you cast that vote, Senator?
Well, I voted in favor of a Republican alternative. I thought that, first of all, this was not just an extension of current law. This was changing current laws, and there's some flaws, I think, in the version that my Democratic friends proposed. One of the flaws includes the extension of jurisdiction on Indian tribes, which is a very big deal in many parts of the country. So the support is there, overwhelming bipartisan support to continue the existing policy. That's the gist of what the Republican alternative was. The House passed a different version. This will go to a conference committee. They'll work out some final agreement, and we'll see what that contains, and then I'll consider that. But I think we want to be careful about how we make changes to this law.
At a time, though, when your opposition is trying to paint your party as a party that's on the wrong side of a lot of issues that are important to women, is that a tough vote to take politically?
You know, I don't worry about that a lot. This idea that someone's going to label me or my party as, involved in a war on women is so ridiculous that I don't think it's going to get any traction.
Okay. We did learn this week that Delta Airlines is purchasing ConocoPhillips in Trainer, which was set to close in just a matter of weeks. The deal includes about $30 million worth of state money. Is that a good deal for taxpayers in Pennsylvania?
Well, that's a judgment that the governor and the state legislature made. But let me just say, I'm really pleased that this is going to continue to operate as a refinery. It's interesting, though, to look at really the only viable buyer that was possible here was someone that decided they were going to make jet fuel instead of gasoline and other kinds of transportation fuels. I'm very hopeful that they'll be successful. I have no reason to think they won't, and I think it's terrific. But we also ought to be aware of the kinds of federal government policies that are making it very, very hard to succeed as a refiner. And part of the reason why the Marcus Hook refinery doesn't have a buyer lined up. And in a nutshell, what it is the federal government has taken away a huge segment of the market. The most egregious way that they've done that is this mandate that we use ethanol instead of gasoline for 10% of our fuel. That's just taken away 10% of the market that otherwise would be served by the folks working at Marcus Hook, for instance. at the refinery there. And it does so in a way that's extremely expensive. It drives up food prices. It consumes 40% of the corn we make now, goes to ethanol to get burned, and it doesn't do anything beneficial for the environment at the end of the day. So it's really misguided policy, and I hope we'll be able to reverse that at some point.
Okay, in the last few seconds we mentioned you will be the chair of the Senate Republican Steering Committee. Right. The job is essentially to get conservatives elected to the Senate. How would you rank at this point the chances of the GOP retaking the Senate in this election cycle?
I'd like to correct you on that. The purpose isn't principally to get involved in campaigns. It's principally to advocate within the Senate for market-based solutions, for limited government solutions to the problems we have, to restore some budget discipline and encourage economic growth in a free enterprise system. Having said that, as to your question about our prospects, I think prospects are pretty good that Republicans will be in control of the Senate. It's not a given by any means, but we have a number of opportunities to pick up seats, so I think it's reasonably likely we'll be in the majority.
All right. We'll be watching the campaign closely.
Right.
I'm sure we'll see you along the road.
Thanks for having me.
Senator, thanks so much for being with us. Our guest on Newsmakers has been Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey.